Morning, good afternoon, evening, everybody. We're back. It's football from across the pond. Evening and all, we're back with Craig and Sam. How you doing, boys?
Very well, thank you.
Good, yeah, good.
Week 2 of we're deep into the postseason. We haven't had a chance to catch up over the end of the season and through the holiday period, and things have all changed. And teams who were expecting to still be hanging around and talking about aren't, unfortunately. Craig, from your side, Sam, from your position, you're kind of just glad the season's over and it's time for a rebuild. And the good news on the coaching front, maybe on your side, is the best news that you could have had in the last few weeks. How are you feeling after the end of the season and into the playoffs?
Part of me is like I get to enjoy the playoffs, which is great from my perspective. Obviously, the Rams not being in it, there's none of that sort of pain and suffering of having to having to watch your team play. But yeah, obviously the biggest news is that we've had is McVay coming back, which I think is going to be massive. I think I've said it all the way through, even when people were saying, "Oh, he's going to retire." I was like, "He's going to stay. He's going to come back another year." And he has. And I think we've taken up the option of Matt Stafford for next year. So again, he's coming back. The only issues now we're waiting on is Jalen Ramsey to make his decision. There was a very bizarre sort of cryptic tweet about it potentially being his last. He didn't. That's not how he wanted to go out. We don't know if that means that's not how
it means he's coming back.
Or is that how he wants to end his career?
What did you think about the Aaron Donald from? Did you see
that's a weird one because he put former Rams in his Instagram bio
or something, yeah.
But then he's now removed it and it just says former Pitts. I think former Pitts number 93 or 97 or whatever number he is.
And I think his college. He talks about his college and his Pitt College or something, doesn't it? But it did say former NFL, former defensive end for the NFL Rams.
But now it just says DL 99. But I don't know if that means former Pitts and his number and DL. There's no "and" there, so we don't know what that is. But so that's probably going to rumble on throughout the whole of the off season now for us. But hopefully he'll come back. We've done all right without him, but we've noticeably missed him still, which is a bit of a
any team would miss a player of that caliber, no matter what. Even as you say, you may have plugged the gap or papered over it, but you're still going to miss a player of that quality. Any team would miss, no matter who they are. Craig, you finally, they clung on. I know you wanted almost the season to be done 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, but they clung on right to the very last game. So A-Rod is still hanging around. There's still the shadow. And I've just seen a headline on NFL.com about, he still thinks he can win another MVP. How are you feeling at the end? Do you feel that you deserve to get in, even though it was a bit last gasp, or do you think it kind of how it ended up is pretty much fair?
If you can't beat the Lions at home, then you don't deserve to get in. It's that simple, And the Lions weren't a bad team, but if you can't beat the Lions at home, then you don't.
In a must-win game,
it's one of those ones. It's a hope that kills you, Gary. You know how it always is, isn't it? They win the 4 games in the run-up. You get yourself into a win-and-you're-in situation. The whole week I was quite relaxed about it. Didn't think, it was going to be fine and we'll win that game and we'll go to... Then I'll start worrying about San Francisco. And it's fun, and you're and you build yourself up, and, Sam's just saying, I can sit back and enjoy the playoffs, and so can I kind of now. But I didn't enjoy the weekend there to the point where I was still that annoyed about the week before. I barely watched it the weekend there. I couldn't bring myself to put it on television. I tried. I watched some of it, but I just couldn't bring myself to
You couldn't buy in.
I think the big difference was that you were nearly there, whereas we were completely out. We knew we weren't.
Exactly. That's it. So I'll sit back and enjoy it now. That's kind of. I've had the week of. I'm not here. And now I'll sit back and enjoy it, But the last thing, and it's going to be the whole entire summer's going to be about Aaron Rodgers.
Again.
And it's very, 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 very tiresome. And that I am absolutely dreading more than anything else. I can't lie, It's about Aaron Rodgers already, and the playoffs are still on.
It's already started, isn't it? There's and And we're talking about that only, as you say, the first round's done. TB12, on a similar nature from the Green Bay Aaron Rodgers discussion. Now that his season's done in Tampa Bay, I know, even though we're still in it and we've still got a chance to go all the way and all that sort of stuff, that it's already starting. The talk of Tom comes back to the Bay for one last fling. Come on, he can't retire until he comes back. It's like, come on, we've got a winning team. We've got who we need. We're not going to go and free agency splurge on, yes, potentially the greatest quarterback and all that sort of stuff. But he's 45 and he had a shocker.
But he's also going to want that big contract, his final contract. And at the end of the day, you've spunked your big contract on getting McCaffrey in. He's the star now. You've managed to find out of nowhere a potentially a years on quarterback in Brock Purdy, when you don't know how he's going to perform against maybe some of the.
You've still got your sole family silver of Trey Lance to come back. Let's not forget.
Like you've got Trey Lance, you've got Brock Purdy. You've still technically at the moment got Jimmy Garoppolo. Like you've got three quarterbacks who all of which could make a claim to be the number one quarterback. Do you really then need to then insert Brady into that?
But the drama that comes with that is just I hate, as soon as you just as a Niners fan, it's one of those like the A-Rod stuff in Green Bay. It's like a bad penny that just rolls around. You know it's coming. There's nothing you can do about it, and here it comes. As soon as the playoffs are out, as soon as he's done, then it starts rolling around again. But as you say, from a Niners perspective, we've got two guys on rookie contracts, so cheap, doing well. As you say, the Trey Lance one. We sold the house for him, got the silverware and all that sort of stuff, and we haven't seen him, so we can't jettison that. We can't just throw that away without at least giving it a go. Why would you need to add the drama of all the Tom Brady story and all that to a team which it's full of stars, but it's not full of stars in a weird way. There's some great players in there, but nobody
it doesn't
is
need
the face, doesn't it? It doesn't need Brady. It's not like a screaming need.
If we were talking about maybe, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, then you probably are looking at probably needing Brady.
Mm-hmm.
But now you've got the fact that you've got a system that works well with rookie quarterbacks.
Shows
that
you
need to then bring in a vet who's going to basically cost a lot of money, want to play his way, not the scheme way. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to change your offense to match his liking.
You run the ball too much as well. You've run the ball far too much for Brady. I mean, how many? It was ridiculous amount of passes he attempted last night against Dallas.
Insane.
70 or something like that they attempted. That's not how San Francisco play.
Yeah. And and it's just not designed for that. And as you say, Sam, the design and the scheme and everything has come to the fore this year with the three quarterbacks we've had to run through to get to where we are. So why would a big star, and we need the money to pay for the other stars on our team. Bosa needs money. Many of the others will need contract renewals and stuff. And it's great to be in a position to have potentially two winners, if you like, but certainly a playoff winning rookie quarterback who's come through and been tested in the fire and all that sort of stuff. That all the stories about Brock, and Trey, who seems to have a higher ceiling potentially than what Brock has got, which is, I think, what everyone keeps saying. Never seen it, but that's what everyone keeps saying. On two rookie deals which are team friendly, the last thing we need is a big superstar to come in and say, I want it this way and play like I want to play.
It upsets the apple cart. You don't need that. Yeah. I don't want to obviously try, I suppose, making parallels between the English football game, but it's like the whole Ronaldo situation.
But it's exactly
that. Enough, he's a great player and he's one of the world's best players obviously in Brady's case, the GOAT, I suppose. But bringing in that player although it brings in the revenue, although it brings in the excitement
and the romance of
the rest of it, because you then start thinking, we're going to have to play to his way, we're going to have to do it that way, we're going to have to, he's always going to be in the spotlight, and then you have the likes of Debo and that are just going to get
McCaffrey and Bosa and all that sort of Kittle and all the stars that are happy to be and that's what's good, as you say, about the locker room almost. That it's a locker room full of really big names, but they're all happy to be in locker room in the cog and the wheel and work together. Whereas somebody like Brady comes in and the main man, then the rest of them are slightly overshadowed. So yeah, it'd be interesting. And also, he can't wear 12 at the 49ers. So what's he going to do there? Obviously,
wear a random number.
Well, yeah, given a random number, but TB12 is his trademark, isn't it? And that'd be interesting. Yeah. But obviously, with Johnny not being here, it would be remiss of us not to kind of touch on the fact that possibly the shock of the wildcard round was his Giants knocking. Well, I want to say it's probably the shock of the wildcard round, but also it's also the Vikings, and it's, as Craig, as you've called them all the way through, the most fraudulent 10 and 14, 11 and 4, 12 and 14, whatever they ended up on their record at the end, they were always, one game away from implosion or one game away from getting it wrong or whatever. Because I think, as they got in with, was it a minus 3 point differential or something insane?
The most one score wins in NFL history.
Yeah.
It's or inside one score wins, And I mean, there's no getting away from it, but they were at home. And the offense is quite potent, and it was the biggest shock of the weekend because there wasn't many shocks, but yeah, it wasn't the biggest surprise in the world to see the Giants go in and take them, because the Giants have done that this year. They've won games that they shouldn't have won. They turn up when they're not supposed to.
Didn't they beat the Eagles? Weren't one of the only teams that beat the Eagles? No, that was the Commanders, wasn't it?
They've not beaten the Eagles.
The Commanders
got swept by the Eagles, and they got swept by the Cowboys this year. But
sure.
I think the one thing about the Giants, and I think it was quite refreshing to see, because obviously coming into this season, I mean, Daniel Jones got a lot of stick.
Yeah,
a lot of stick for being the quarterback there. People were talking about him potentially being traded away. And we got to see, I suppose, maybe the real Daniel Jones in that game against the Vikings. Someone who, because he hasn't had the weapons on offense realistically. I mean, he's had to heavily rely on Barkley this year, and even in that game, I suppose he did, but he was also able to get his rushing game going. I think he threw over 300 yards or something. He
300 yards, couple of touchdowns, and 70 yards rushing or something, wasn't it? So he had a good game.
Yeah.
The Vikings did roll out the red carpet for him, though, to be fair.
Yeah. I don't think he'll get quite as much sort of freedom of Philadelphia when he walks in there next week.
I mean, you look at the players that come steaming through that defensive line at him. He'll need to be.
He'll definitely need to be on his skates, wouldn't he?
But Barkley has been back to his brilliant best, though. That's what's. I mean, he really has picked them up, thrown them up. Like you say, Sam Jones has had no overall targets at wide receiver, and you can tell by how many times he switched that about. He had a couple of games with Wan'Dale Robinson before he disappeared, and this Hodgkins has come in. James had a couple of games where he was involved, but it's all different names constantly. So it's been Barkley's thrown that offense on his shoulders, and he's carried it very well, to be fair to him.
He's definitely back to.
And to be fair, their defense, I think, was it the week they played the Eagles? I think it was week 4 or something like that. They're very early on, and they lost. They got absolutely decimated by the Eagles. But when you look at the players they didn't have on defense in that game, and they've got them all back now.
Thibodeau's started to come through, isn't he, and stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be a different game than the one. I mean, obviously, because the last game they played was just a dead rubber. It was just a formality of getting players fit and all of that. And so I think this game, although I still think the Eagles will win, it wouldn't totally surprise me if the Giants
hung around. Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising me if they hung around and it was close for 3.5 quarters or whatever. But I think, as you say, the Eagles probably still definitely favourites. But I think for the Giants to get where they are with a one-dimensional team, and as you say, it's pretty one-dimensional, is give it to Saquon, because you can't throw it to your wide receiving core, because you look at it and you go, who are you going to? And now even their number one receiver make a howling drop towards the end of the game. I don't know if you saw it. It was like all he needed to. Nobody was around him. He was literally in 10, 15 yards of space all around him. Just had to catch it, get the first down. Game was done, and dropped it. So it's like that's the number one receiver they had. So I should imagine Johnny at that point had his head in his hands and just thought, "Oh my God, we've gone and blown it." And
He's probably praying for Kenny Golladay at that point.
which literally says it all for that team. So for Jones to be, he's from a scoring perspective, fantasy football wise, I think he's done surprisingly well. I think he's in the top 10, 9 or 10. So with nothing to throw at.
That's been bolstered with a lot of massive games. He's also had quite a few poor games. He's the kind of, for me, he looks like he's going to be that kind of Joe Flacco type quarterback, where if he's got a real good team around him, he makes very, very good players look good, look very good. But if he's got when he's got the substandard around him, he plays
to the standard around him, doesn't he?
That's exactly it. They're another team, to be fair. I mean, we talk about the Vikings doing that and getting just over the line and stuff, but they were another team. They were another team that won a lot of close games that could have went either way, and they've fallen over the line one way or another. And it doesn't happen by accident. If you continually get the wins, that there's good calls being made at the right times. You're playing the right plays at the right, and you're pulling them off.
Yeah. Eventually you're going to run out on.
Going back to our sort of conversation before, we were going through the, all the different awards that are the regular season awards. I think looking at it now and where the position they are, obviously Dan Cobble did a great job, but Brian Daboll, I think, is going to get it, and I think he deserves it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Doug Peterson, I think, is going to. I still think Doug Peterson, for the job he's doing at the Jags, is going to be.
I mean, yeah, he's in with a shout. I just think what Daboll's done in terms of, because he's not had,
because his first year, almost his first year as well.
First year, the offense is being limited in terms of the players he's had to put in. Obviously, he's got Bellinger back, who I think's going to be a quality tight end for them. But yeah, I think it's the job that he's managed to do with the players that he's had available, and still managed to get them in the playoffs in a division where he got swept as well. When you think about it, you had the Eagles.
I mean, there's 3 teams of that division still in the playoffs. I mean, for the fact he's still there and still knocking around is impressive. Yeah.
So
it's going to be. He's definitely in with a shout, as you say. He's got to be, getting one of the highest A+ marks of his year of first year coaching. That whether or not he's in there with, a shout for winning the whole thing, I can't see why not. But I still think Doug Peterson might get it from the Jags because of the hot mess that the Jags were. At least the Giants were
going to be there as well. I mean, because of how well the Eagles have done and what he's. But the only argument I have for Sirianni is he got given every single weapon that he could ever want.
Yeah,
and it kind of just worked out for him.
Yeah, kind of just plugged it in and gone. There you go. You guys are all good enough to work it out. But you're right, Daboll's kind of done wonders with a very limited staffing and resourcing. He's not got those big name stars. He's certainly, on offense, he needs a lot of help, and it'll be interesting to see what they do after being as successful as they have been. They're going to have to. All teams in the NFC East are going to have to go big in terms of free agency and where they go now, because that is now like one of the toughest divisions after looking at it from this year. So they're all going to have to strengthen in areas. So that will be interesting to see how they go. I mean, obviously, touching on the Niners, it was a lot closer for the first half than I expected.
So you were behind in the first half. So yeah, I would say that was a bit closer than you expected.
Bonehead play from Jimmy Ward at the end of the first half, which gave them basically a free 3 points.
Why you do that?
It's Jimmy Ward. You do it because you're Jimmy Ward, and he has a tendency and a history of doing it. But it's one of those ones where if it was any player was going to do it, it was going to be him. But it was almost like the final nail in Jimmy Ward's 49er career is that's it. He's definitely not getting a new contract after this year. He wants a fortune anyway, and he's just not been up to scratch. He hasn't even managed to win his starting job back at safety from a guy we picked up from the Bears in week 2 or 3 or whatever else, and a second year in Hufanga, who's splashy, definitely splashy, but he's not a good safety. His eyes are lazy. He looks in the backfield a lot. He looks for those big plays a lot, and I think he's got caught out a couple of times. But the fact that even with all of that, Jimmy Ward is still only playing sort of slot or kind of an extra body, and it shows that he's not trusted. And with that bonehead play that could have actually really changed things because, we were up, momentum, whatever else. Yes, we'd gone in at the half. We were leading, like, I think we were 2 points up at the time. And then, we were going to get the ball back. So potential for him to go and, almost, change momentum by such a stupid play. It's just
in a way you were lucky that happened at the end of the first half, not the end
yeah.
of the game.
Yeah, well,
that's the only saving grace. But
I do think that second half, I think the ref started the refereeing, the officiating was a bit. There was some unnecessary involvement of calls that I think, where you had players that were being ineligible men downfield. It's like
it pinged that times 2 or 3 times on the same number 60
on the same player. But the thing is, it was at the 2-yard mark. I know they can only go a yard, but a lot of the time you see in 3-4 yards they're down the field and they don't call it. And to pick him up twice, I mean, to be fair, you could say that, well, if he's done it once, don't do it again.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was wandering so far. See, when you seen it in the replay, I mean, literally just took a couple of steps forward after snapping the ball. It's like, what? Yeah. Why are you walking forward?
It's literally stand up, then go forward, right? You at least show a little bit of willing. But I also think, on that front, I wonder, and I do think that the officiating got tighter after the Debo leg pull twisty when it all kicked off a little bit.
That was a very rivalry thing to do. That's all.
Yeah, it was a narky divisional rivalry type of thing to do, and then because it all kind of pushed and shoved and handbags came out and everything else, I think the refs then kind of thought, we've kind of let a lot of stuff go, and they did let a lot of stuff go. There were a lot of late hits, there were a lot of out of bounds stuff, there were a lot of things that normally you would have gone, some pulling and shoving and tugs and whatever else that they got away with, letting them play out type thing. And I think then they kind of...
Was there a hit in that first half where it would have been helmet to helmet? I don't know if it was your match or if it was another match where it would have been helmet to helmet, but the ball was right in the way.
Yeah, I seen that one.
He hit the ball rather than his helmet. That could have been obviously very dangerous, but he was lucky that the ball was there.
It wasn't that wasn't ours, no. I think it was... I don't know which match it was.
I'd seen that. I think that was in the Bills game, I think that might have
been
the
Bills Dolphins game or something.
Yeah. I knew it was one of them, but I just thought that stuck out to me because it's like that could have been obviously
could have been really nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, the one big thing that I took out.
I think we've lost Craig.
I think we've lost Craig.
Yeah, I'm back.
No. Right. Yeah. There you go. Right.
I think Purdy done very, very well. I thought Purdy was fantastic. He done what he had to do. Yes, he maybe made a couple of mistakes in the, especially in the first half, but I thought he handled himself very, very well. It pains me to say it, but I thought he handled himself very well.
Yeah. Those first half were it was playoff jitters. He was. I think you look at some of the plays that he was trying to do. He was forcing things. He was doing things that I think
outside of his comfort
zone in his first playoff game was doing. And I think once he got himself settled and he was bringing McCaffrey into the game, he was finding his outlet in George Kittle. Like he was just doing everything that he would then do in a normal game. And I think I always think that the one thing that I with any rookie quarterback, a good tight end makes it a lot easier. And that's what having someone like Kittle as an outlet is just
and that's where the embarrassments of riches for us comes in. As you say, a good tight end is a great safety net, but a good tight end and a great running back who's a utility back, I mean, it's a win-win scenario. If Kittle's not open, McCaffrey's going to be open, and then if those two, it opens up the field for everything. And it was I thought it was an interesting start that Shanahan's schemed in, because there were a couple of big splashy plays that early on. I mean, especially the first one early on, which was a whiff. I don't know where that the ball was nowhere near any of our receivers or anything. Could have been a horrible start. Could have gone straight to a Seahawks player or whatever. Mm-hmm. It just seemed a bit unusual to go in almost quite as aggressive with that, with a rookie QB, last pick of the draft, all the blah blah blah, first playoff game, all that. You'd have thought if he's going to do, go big with some passing early on, it's going to be screens, it's going to be short, little in and out, hit the guys, gets into rhythm, not bomb it down the field and go for the big splashy plays. But as you say, jitters were there. It was like it was in a weird way. Finally, get to see the jitters and the nerves and some of the the bits from Brock Purdy that you would have expected to see maybe in one or two of his other games. This was those were exactly the type of stuff you would expect to see a first year rookie quarterback in his first playoff game at home do. The fact, as you say, he got over it, got himself settled, got his mind back into it, and started to go back to the stuff that was been working, the stuff that he's done, and showed didn't turn the ball over. I suppose that's the one main the massive plus point is he didn't turn the ball over. He threw for 3 TDs and didn't turn the ball over, and then that you're always going to win if you don't turn the ball over in the playoffs.
Yeah,
and I think
the thing about Purdy as well, you've got to remember, that's all very, a rookie who's coming in and maybe not starting at the beginning of the season, but he will already at the start of the season be thinking, I might be involved if we get to the playoffs here. They can get themselves into a mindset of that's what I'm going into this season. I mean, Purdy's got into that season thinking, I'm just delighted I've got a number. He's not even thinking about playing in the playoffs,
He's not, at the beginning of the year, he was still trying to, will he even be in the team, let alone will he, be playing or anything? Because, we had 5 quarterbacks, at the beginning of the season. He's managed to beat out, some quarterbacks who've played in the league before, and get the 3rd position and play. And it's weird thinking about it, the fact that he was our 3rd QB and had to go out and play the, whatever it's the practice squad and have to be the teams that play like the other guy's quarterback has to play. Maybe it's done him the world of good. It's it showed him up to the stuff that he has to face. And as I said, Fred Warner and some of the defensive players on our side have come out and said they've got no worries and they don't worry about him. He's been playing against the best defense in the league all season.
Well, that's the thing.
You look at it and think that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad way of training, is it? If you're playing against the number 1 defense.
But only since about week 9 or 10 or something like that. Before that, he wouldn't have been anywhere near them.
Yeah, he would have not been. He would have been playing with the 2s and the 3s and stuff. So yeah,
I mean, when we talked about I think it was it week 12 or that, and we were talking about when you get to the playoffs. Do you go back to Jimmy if he's available, or do you stick with Brock? I think you've got to stick with Brock.
Job's done. That's not even a decision now. That can't be a decision now. Jimmy comes back and Jimmy takes the clipboard and takes over Jimmy Johnson's role. Absolutely fine. Got no problem with him being the backup. And I don't think Jimmy would expect to come in, and none of the team would expect him to walk in and I'm your starting QB. I've been off for scooting around on a scooter with a broken foot for the last 8 weeks, but I'm just going to stroll into the championship game and take over. Nobody in their right mind would allow that. Having him as a backup was a great position. Yeah. It'll be interesting come the off season and come next time round or whatever else. Is it a camp battle for the QB1 slot? It has to be. You can't not give Brock a fair shot at it now. So
I think I still am convinced Jimmy's gone. I think he's going to the Jets. Yeah. I don't know why. I've just had this mindset that he's going to the Jets. And
I think he's going to the Commanders. I think he'll end up in Washington.
Mm-hmm. That's a good shout because they're not happy with Wentz or Heineke. Well, Heineke, they don't seem to.
But they quite liked Howell when he started playing that last game.
Yeah, he played that last game, but yeah, I see Jimmy going to Washington, the capital.
I just think with how problematic the Jets are at the moment in terms of their QB, obviously they've pretty much given up on Zach Wilson, I mean Mike White's done all right when he's come in, but if you had the if they have the choice of Wilson, White, or Jimmy,
the Jets are one of these.
What about Derek Carr now? That's the thing.
The Jets, they don't like to see quarterbacks who they've given up on go and do well elsewhere. And I think that's a problem for Zach Wilson. I think they might just stick with him for a wee while longer, just in case he does become what.
Just in case he does turn good, yeah.
If he ends up going away somewhere else and thriving, the fans will go absolutely crazy.
Because then suddenly it's on the coaches, and suddenly it's on the organisation again, and suddenly it's whatever.
And they bring in a Derek Carr or a Jimmy Garoppolo, and they maybe make it scrape into the playoffs and lose straight away, and nothing happens. And 2 years' time, Zach Wilson's in the championship game, and they're looking, going, that should have been us.
It should have been us. And it'd be interesting to see that. But yeah, I mean, I thought Jimmy to the Jets was a nail, Stonewall was definitely going to happen, but then Derek Carr's now in the mix, and Carr to New York is another story. Jimmy to Vegas. Who knows? There's
I
so many free agencies quarterbacks this
There's
year.
a lot of teams needing a quarterback as well at the moment. There's a lot of teams who can upgrade in a quarterback, not necessarily absolutely needing, but there's a lot of teams that could easily upgrade in a quarterback. And there are quite a few.
And I've got no quite, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy went with D'Amico to the Colts or wherever Ryans goes. There's another link there. Hopefully, it's out of the NFC and it's on the other side. But I'd imagine that if D'Amico goes and takes on a head coaching job, he might want that safe set of hands that he knows Jimmy is and can lead a team.
I mean, especially if they're then going to then potentially draft a quarterback, they're going to potentially need someone like Jimmy to be that starter and, do something similar to what has happened in Atlanta with Mariota being there and then Ridder taking over. I think probably what you've seen with who was the other one that started and suddenly didn't start but then came in.
Trubisky.
Trubisky
and Pickett.
But I mean, you've seen guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick and made a career. Tyrod Taylor. They've made a career out of going and being the starting quarterback when a team's just drafted a rookie and holding down the fort until the rookie's ready and then being unleashed. They've made a career out of it. There's a very good job to be had there. If you're willing to do the moving about and the shipping here, there, and everywhere.
You're willing to, as you say, 18 months to 2 years in one place and go there and bring the guy on and move on and do the same.
I can see that being Jimmy G's career now.
To be honest, could you see someone like Jimmy potentially going like somewhere like the Dolphins, where we don't know really what's going to happen with Tua? I mean,
I think Brady's going to go to the Dolphins for one last shake.
I don't think he can. Not after this year, and not after the hoo-ha with the Dolphins tapping him up and everything. I don't think he can go there. That's
all been punished and done and dusted now. Though it's one of those ones. He's a free agent now. I can still see him ending up in Miami. He's building a blooming eco-friendly house in Miami for good. He's not leaving the state. Let's face it.
I think he's set up to take over a stake in the Dolphins as well, or something, isn't he? I think he's going to end up.
I can see him having one last shake there.
I think it wouldn't surprise me if the Dolphins took on a veteran quarterback just in case there is ever because I mean he's been in 2 concussion protocols this year already.
Pretty bad ones too.
3, isn't it?
For possibly 3.
Well, no, the first one wasn't concussion. So
it wasn't an official, but let's be honest, it was. So he's had potentially 2 official, 1 unofficial. If he takes another one at the start of next year, that could be his career over.
And they've not paid him yet. Are they going to? And they're going to have to pay him. If not this year, they're at least going to have to do the 5th-year option this year.
Yeah.
And that's expensive. So they might just turn around and say, you know what? I mean, they were nearly done last year. They went shopping for Watson, so they weren't convinced on Tua. And he looked okay in times this year. He did. He looked pretty decent.
He looked good when he wasn't getting smacked to the floor.
Yeah. He looked good before that first unofficial back injury, whatever. He was, he was on fire. He was MVP discussions and all that sort of stuff. That's gone out the window, and It'll be interesting. I think you're right. It wouldn't surprise me that they bring in a steady hand to be there just in case.
Maybe not someone like Jimmy, but it might be someone, like, I don't know, someone like a Carson Wentz, a Matt Ryan, just one of those sort of
journeymen. As you said, journeymen who are doing the Ryan Fitzpatrick role.
Just to kind of, because I mean, but then saying that, they could decide to stick with Kyler. I mean, he hasn't done terribly when he's been called up. And they have
not going to win a Super Bowl with them, though, is he? That's the thing. And they everywhere else they are kind of, if not Super Bowl ready, they're very close to being.
Yeah.
With Tyreek Hill there, Waddle, decent running backs and stuff.
And they're young. They've had just as many draft picks as you say the Jets and stuff of late. They are all young. They're cheap. In the main. Especially the defense. And it's they've got some room to maneuver, and they've got draft picks as well.
Could they, as I suppose, as a left field option and maybe a big coup? Could they go and get Lamar Jackson?
Well, you know,
and then trade away to her.
Can he trade him? I don't know. Would any other team take Tua with all of the potential risk factors?
True, but at the same time, if you can bring in Lamar Jackson, put him on a big deal, give him those weepons, that's a Super Bowl move.
I think whoever picks up Lamar Jackson selling himself down the river, I really do. I think he's almost finished already. You know,
I think Lamar's going to Vegas. To be honest, I think it's a Vegas thing.
They were talking. There was a talk of the Bears potentially trading their first round pick and Fields for Lamar and the Ravens' first round pick. Now that would be a weird trade because I actually, you saw a good bit of Fields. He was starting to look really good.
Very Lamar Jackson-esque.
Yeah. Fields just needs a few more weapons around him,
he just
to stretch the field.
He needs Darnell Mooney fit, and he needs one other reliable wide receivers. Bringing someone like, bringing in that edge rusher, probably, I think they're looking at Jalen Carter or Will Anderson as their first round.
They are now sitting pretty. They can sweep the draft by trading back because they don't need to go. They've
got over 100 million in cap space. They've got, they've got the first round pick. They're basically in control of the whole of what happens in the draft and what
in the off season and everything. As they are sitting in the driver's position, it's all what the Bears do is going to have such a knock on effect to so many teams. Because as you say, if the Bears trade back from the number one pick to a quarterback needy team, get a haul of picks, strengthen the defense, get a decent wide receiver, suddenly they go from being worst team in the North to Craig's going to have to be definitely looking over his shoulder.
I mean, do they look at someone like? Do they maybe look towards someone like the Seahawks who? Geno, I would honestly, if I was the Seahawks, I wouldn't be looking at signing on Geno for another year because he's free agent now coming up. He's done okay, but he's not done great. Seahawks, realistically, they have 2 picks coming into this season. Could they potentially trade up and get, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud in the first pick, send away a few other picks that they picked up from getting rid of Russ, and they can drop down to the 5th pick and bring in.
They've got the 5th pick, though, haven't they? That's what they've got. Why would you? I don't know if there's enough of a step up for them.
Yeah,
I mean, what falls to them with the 5th?
They might, they might decide, there's options there, but I think, realistically, what the Bears need is probably, like say, defensive players, a few offensive linemen, and some weapons. But the weapons they can pick up in
free agency, as you say, if they've got the cap space. But they need the bodies. They need those fit bodies in the O line and defense to kind of shore that bit up.
Yeah,
but
the Bears are the scariest team going into this off season. There's no getting away from it, and with the cap space that they own the free agency and they own the draft. So I mean, if they don't come out next year a pretty tidy team, then there's
but it is the best.
Basically, they've got absolutely everything chucked at them, and if they can't make a success of that, then they never will. This
is their chance to get
something. They're perfect. It was almost like how, when Dolphins had to do their big, massive rebuild. This is their chance to do that.
Exactly. The Browns as well. They've had 3 or 4 chances. The Jaguars have had 3 or 4 chances. But. Yeah. This is the biggest chance I've ever really seen. I've never seen a team coming into it who owns free agency as much as the Bears do with their cap space, and who own the draft with where they sit and what they've got.
Especially with some of the actual free agents that are going to be available as well. I mean, even looking at sort of the running back position. I mean, to be fair, Barkley's probably going to get picked up by the Giants and pay a massive amount. But
Josh Jacobs is
available. I know that there's a lot of question marks that he's just playing for a contract, but he's still a quality running back. There are plenty of wide receivers that are going to be potentially free.
I don't even think they're that. I mean, but Montgomery's a decent enough running back. I think Montgomery's fine. I don't think they need to do anything there. And they've got one piece of the puzzle in Claypool. I still think he can be a very good player for them. They just need a couple of really big, or one really big wide receiver name You know, one really big one that's going to grab you your, 100 catches plus every year. They're going to get you 1,000 yards year in, year out. They need that. I mean, Cole Kmet, tight end, he looks like he might be something,
all right.
He's a potential, isn't he? He can polish up and probably get better. But yeah, I think you're right. They need a big name wide receiver, and then they just need some decent big bodies on the line to kind of give Justin Fields the opportunity to either hit those receivers or keep him upright in the pocket long enough, or to actually provide a run game where they can lean on the run game, and then they don't potentially need big name wide receivers because the ones they've got are adequate enough if your run game works. But at the moment, at the moment, nothing works in that front line for the Bears other than letting everybody through.
And I still think they've got to replace Roquan Smith.
Yeah, well, that too.
They let him go, didn't they? And I think that that was a big hole that they didn't really fill. So I think he could potentially be. They could be potentially looking at that sort of defensive position.
It's one of those. I'm actually sitting praying they do something really, really stupid, like give up
really
the house to Lamar Jackson or something like that, and go after something, do something really dumb like that, or trade out of the first and get next to nothing for it. So that's my hope at the moment is that they do something dumb.
Is that only because the Packers could potentially be at the bottom of the pile?
The Packers are at the bottom of the pile now. Let's face it. Rodgers or no Rodgers.
At least you're still touching. At least you're still in touching distance. But if the Bears do something right in the off season, you could be cut adrift quite quickly.
The lines are going in the right direction, and my only hope is that the Vikings stay the Vikings and do what
speaking
they're doing now.
Speaking of the Vikings, we might as well talk about the Vikings being the Vikings. The Chargers were the Chargers. The Chargers managed to outcharger themselves, didn't they? I mean, that was just how can you be 27-0 up and not close the game out? Run the ball.
At half time, I thought that game's over. I'm off to bed.
So many people I saw on the NFL UK sites and stuff that were like, well, I turned off at halftime, that game was done, and wake up in the morning going, what?
Yeah.
What? How was that? What? It was just insane. I mean, you don't have a running back like Eckler and not just feed him the ball when you're 3 or 4 touchdowns up. What were you thinking?
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, he's no longer he doesn't have the offense. Actually, Staley still has the job, but they fired their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, offensive coordinator's gone now.
I mean, that's a prime job for somebody who wants the offensive coordinator position, isn't it? With Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler. I mean,
I think Sean Payton's got his eye on it now that the Rams isn't available, is he not? Is that not kind of Sean Payton was going to LA one way or another?
But will he go for will he get given the head coach position and bump Staley back to offensive coordinator?
I can't see that happening. I honestly don't see Payton being anywhere because from what I hear of obviously what teams are going to have to pay to get Payton in, I just think the Saints are going to demand too much, and people aren't going to be, they're a good. I think was it the Cardinals were potentially looking at Payton, but now they've turned their attention to Brian Flores. So it's like
they can't afford them. No, it's going to have to be a big name. I still, to be fair, to be honest, I still think it's going to be the Cowboys, regardless. I don't care if they go and win the Super Bowl. I still say they'll ship McCarthy out and. Jerry loves Sean.
But Jerry, I can't see Peyton going to work under Jerry. They're just too. I mean, it's a tinderbox if that happens, and it might be amazing. It might win the Super Bowl and have 2 years of complete dominance, but it will then just completely implode again. And maybe that's what we want, but not apart from the Super Bowl. Because I wouldn't be too upset if the Cowboys organization imploded for a few years and ended up in the doldrums. But then you look at it. Also thinking about the AFC, I mean, I know it wasn't a shock, but it was a shock to me that the Dolphins ran the Bills as close as they did, considering they were on their third string quarterback as well and whatever else. It was like that was a pretty shocking result. I thought the Bills would absolutely steamroller.
I think the Bills didn't really get out of second gear though. It didn't feel like they were at full swing. They were,
as you say, they played it safe.
In a way.
Yeah, they knew they could always accelerate, go ahead and go and put it down. But I thought it was just a lot closer than it probably really needed to be from Bills fans' perspective. I think they all kind of felt comfortable going in, but the scoreline just reads a little bit too close.
Bad coaching calls, really bad coaching calls from Miami at crucial times that cost them that game because, as you say, Sam, the Bills, they weren't out of second gear, but it was one of those ones where I'm not sure they could have really got it out of second gear if they really had to. Do you know what I mean? It was one of those games where they were just kind of stuck in it.
Yeah, they just, I think because they spent 3 quarters realistically in that second gear that when they needed
Miami had done it.
Yeah, had Miami actually, not had to give up 2 timeouts in stupid moves and not waste time and all the, even that rookie O-liner who kept just making mistakes, if they'd have just, if they'd have got that, I think if they'd have got that touchdown and got that lead, I think they may have gone on to win it.
Yeah.
Or at least I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd have gone on to win it.
I said it earlier, but 3rd and 12, and you're in your own kind of 5-6 yard line. You're 3rd and 12. You've got a rookie quarterback, and you go 4 verticals. I mean, you're just asking to throw up an interception. And that ball never got anywhere near the receiver. It was the easiest interception of the night, And those are the kind of mistakes you just can't be making. You just got to hand that off, punt the ball, and play defense. You've got a 4-point lead, even if you concede the touchdown, and maybe take them another 10 minutes to get it there, and then you're kind of heading into the 4th quarter, 3 points down. And
it was like the Vikings against the Giants. They were 4th and 8, and he threw it 5 yards. What
3 yards?
Why are you throwing that 5 yards?
3-yard check down.
Yeah, like
And I saw something that made me laugh about that one. I know it's tongue in cheek and whatever else, and it's only kind of amusing because the good news story. But somebody kind of posted something going, "Well, I know it was 4th and 8, but I threw it 3 yards for DeMar." It's like, it's not quite as funny. It's funny because it's 3, and it's pray for DeMar, and only threw it 3 yards on a 4th and 8. It was like, what a Kirk Cousins thing to do. But I thought it was a kind of amusing, but it was typical of Kirk Cousins to do something as stupid as that.
I seen a quote from Kirk Cousins, that said, "Oh, I had a perfect completion, 3 yards, got me a 235-day weekend, so
something like 260 foot
completion, and I'm off on holiday. See you all later."
What was it? It was either I had to choose Mexico or Philadelphia or something, and I chose Mexico.
I chose Mexico.
Talking of people going on holiday on a one-way ticket, Cliff Kingsbury's not coming back, is he? Apparently,
no,
he's headed off to Thailand and says he's not going to come back. At least he's not going to consider 2023 positions.
It's a strange one, isn't it? He's only young too.
I think he suffered a bit at Arizona though, didn't he?
I think he did.
I think he got shafted a bit there. I think with everything that was going on. I mean, he deserved to be sacked. Don't get me wrong, but I think the way that it all played out, especially with how I think the way Murray was acting, I think the way that the game was going. He got shafted, and I think he just
totally undermined early on, wasn't he, with that whole Kyler Murray contract being shared and the study groups and all the shit that was early on. I mean, just no way that anyone's going to and if you don't win on that season, and they had a stinker towards the end. I don't think it was obvious on the way out, and I think the GM position was bad as well, wasn't it? So.
And he did get made the scapegoat in that, I think, a bit. I mean, the whole the offense, the defensive coordinators weren't great. Clearly, the decisions that were made by the GM wasn't great, but he was the one that was taking the flak, and you do find that with a lot of that with that position, that sort of that head coach position, you're
always that guy, isn't it?
But you just think, was it really his fault? I don't think necessarily his plays were always terrible. Yes, he was maybe a bit
gung ho at times.
But. He's a young head coach. He's going to make some wrong decisions. You got to,
They don't get better without it, do they? I suppose that's the thing. They've got to go through that, and that's one of the things about the Dolphins. You're just thinking, it's McDaniel's first time as head coach, and you hope that this experience is going to be learned from it and going forward, and they'll be stronger and better for it. And
to be fair, Mike McDaniel's in that first half made some very ballsy calls that worked.
Yeah.
And he has done throughout the season. He's made really aggressive, bold decisions that have come off.
But some of them are, and the biggest ones didn't in the end, and that's what cost them, and that's it's all very.
And that's what will be remembered as well, won't it?
Week 4, but you've got to do it when it counts, you know.
They've got a long off season to second guess and navel gaze, haven't they? So
I think the problem was I don't know what happened in that second half, but time management just seemed to go completely out of the window.
Yeah,
and
it was nuts. But see, going back to the coach of the year conversation, I think you all missed the mark, because see, for me, I think Lovie Smith deserves coach of the year. He's for going, stick it up. I know you're going to fire me in the morning. So
what a last week that was. That was literally how we just going.
You're going to fire me? Right, well, I'm losing you the first round pick.
You're losing them. Absolutely brilliant. What a way to go. Take that.
And you know what would be even funnier is if he then moved to one of the Bills as one of the coaching staff there, to the Bears, sorry. That'd be even better.
So I got you the first round pick, and you get me the offensive coordinator position, or whatever. It'd be fun. I mean, it was a beautiful moment. It was almost guaranteed it was going to happen after that. Everyone knew he was on the chopping block. Everyone knew it was almost, and now,
I think
from a draft perspective and everything else, it was just
another one though, where how can you expect him to do anything with that team?
Team is dreadful.
It's a poison chalice of a job for whoever gets it next as well. For me, it's just that they're an absolute disarray.
They just make they've even they've had very high picks for the last few years. They just make bad decision upon bad decision, and then it gets left to the head coach to try and pick up the pieces.
But when you look at what they had, though, isn't it? Just 5 years ago, look at what they had. They had a decent running back. They had Watson. They had Nick Hopkins down the way. They were really, really good. They had JJ Watt. I mean, they were really good.
And they'd made bad decisions. I mean, they traded Hop for David Johnson was one of the worst things I've ever seen.
He actually played at the back end of the season. Who is it for now?
Saints.
The Saints.
He found a hole somewhere. I don't know how that's happened. Yeah, bizarre. There's some interesting coaching positions, and the Texans is one of those positions. I think was probably one of the reasons that CJ Stroud thought about not declaring for the draft, because as a young QB, and you look at that and you go, I'm going to go to the Texans. I'm going to get absolutely battered for 3 years and be, no chance of success. Do I really want that? I wonder if that was a thought process that why he would not declare.
And the thing about it is as well, it's Texas, they are massive football state. You are well known in that state.
Yeah, you can't hide there,
can you? As the number one pick, there's so much expected from you.
The coming of the Messiah, isn't it, down there? It would be, yeah.
It's it'll be that would be a tough, lonely place to be. It's and
again, he hasn't got any options. Brevin, I mean, even if you look at tight end, Brevin Jordan hasn't worked out so far. They've got another rookie tight end who's no, they've got someone else who's
they have another one as well. Yeah,
Akins, I think, is there, and he's been okay, but their wide receivers are just non-existent. You've got Brandon Cooks, who clearly doesn't want to be there.
Then you've got Mechie coming back potentially, but I mean that's a good news story, but I don't think that's going to be a.
Yeah, it's not
Chris Morgan, let's be honest. I think he's done at the Texans now. I think he was only there until the end of this year. He's gone. They don't have wide receivers. No. When you're a rookie quarterback, you need good wide receivers, and you also need a decent tight end who's going to bail you out. I mean, you've got the only
you need an O-line.
You need an O-line.
You need an O-line. Their O-line's awful.
The only saving grace is they have Damian Pierce, who is a quality running back.
That's it. But again, even he's going to get absolutely beaten up next year, whoever's there, because as you say, the O-line is not making any holes for that guy. So I feel for anybody who goes anywhere near the Houston Texans from a head coach position, draft position, everything else.
It's one of those ones where, there are only 32 teams in the NFL. So, there are only 32 head coach jobs. So every single one of them is well after. But I mean, if I was a top head coach and I was offered that job, I'd be looking going, I might just wait for the next one. It's going to have to be an up-and-comer who's eager for a chance to, I cannot see any established head coach with going in there and saying,
you're going to have to go in there and go, okay, this is a 10-year rebuild project.
Yeah.
And I know that, and I
you're going to need
expect
to give me the time and the chance.
you're going to have to guarantee me that I get the next 5 drafts, because you can't give me a 2-year contract and hope for miracles. It's just not going to work, because that is a team in dire need of a complete strip back overhaul. Sell what you got, go get as much as you can for Pierce maybe, and just really sort of rebuild, tank for a year or two.
Pierce aside, I mean, there is nothing worth any value whatsoever, and that is a proper scary place to be in when you've got a roster of 54 players, to have
54 and got one.
The only other one I think you would maybe make a case for is Derek Stingley, and I think he has done quite well. Being in the position he is, but again, it's a rookie cornerback. You're expecting miracles from a rookie cornerback.
Can't do that. It's they need a complete rebuild, and you need someone with experience to do that. But to get someone with experience, you need to have a bit.
They're not going to touch it, though. So they're in a horrible situation in Houston.
That's 22, but it's of their own making. It's of their own making. They're the idiots that threw away such massive trades. I mean, what they spent for Cooks as well. They gave LA quite a bit for Cooks, did they not?
Yeah, fair bit. I mean, they've not done themselves any favours. Yeah, absolutely. The Watson trade, the Watson sitting for a year, and all the hoo-ha, and how they dealt with all the Watson thing as well. I don't think they've.
That's when it really fell apart for them big time. That when that all fell apart, that's when they fell apart, and it just goes to show you what a kind of when their quarterback is the man. Yeah. When something like that happens, it just throws your whole entire organisation into disarray. And that's why I'm worried about what happens when Rodgers goes, because, when Rodgers goes, then, we've been so quarterback-led for a decade, for 2 decades,
Exactly. I was going to say it.
So quarterback-led. It's kind of one of those ones where...
Could the Packers be a team that could try and trade up to get a quarterback if they know that Rodgers is going to go? Do you trust Jordan Love?
No.
It's one of those ones where
no.
If we know Rodgers is going, then I can see that happening. And even maybe Jordan Love getting his chance next year with the rookie under, Packers are. But we're not going to go into
certainly have history of drafting a replacement and sticking them on the bench, don't you?
Well, but we're not going to go into the market and pick up a Lamar Jackson. We're not going to go and pick up a Derek Carr. We don't do that in free agency. Packers, we don't play free agency like that. It's not going to happen. We are going to bring in the next guy is going to come from someone's third string or someone's practice squad or the draft. That's where they'll come from.
I mean,
I think it'll be Love still.
Even if you didn't go for someone like CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, who are realistically going to be the top 2 picks, someone like Will Levis or is it Jordan Richardson? I think is his name. Or
I think there's a few options there.
There's a few good enough guys who with a year sitting and learning behind.
The other option is,
should be all right.
Do you maybe, if you do know that you're going to have Jordan Love this year, do you tank this year and go and get someone like Caleb Williams the following year?
That's the other thing.
How many other teams are going to be doing that?
Yeah.
By week 3 or 4 next season, you're going to have teams already going, hang on, Caleb Williams is coming. We've started off really badly. Let's not fight too much. Yeah, Rodgers will come back because
Rodgers is going to come back. He's not finished yet. He's going to come back and he's going to have another year. And maybe he will have a close to MVP year. Maybe he will do well next year.
He was starting to build those relationships with Watson and Dobbs and Lazard again. I think, and even Tunyon was. I mean, he's had Tunyon for a while, but he was starting to build relationships, and maybe he wants to maybe he thinks one last go. Now I've built these relationships. They know what I expect from them.
Yeah, I think
run it back on one final fling. All right, we got a minute left, Giants. I'm going to give you a quick rundown. Who do we think's getting through after this weekend? Let's start with Eagles and the Giants.
Eagles.
Sorry, Johnny, it's a clean sweep. The Eagles are going to take that one. Niners, Cowboys.
Cowboys.
I think the Niners are going to.
Yeah, I think the home field advantage is just going to take it.
I think this is the shock. I think this is where the shock comes. I think Purdy's carried his rookiness as far as he can, and I think the Cowboys will come out and get him. And when they get him, they'll score enough, I think.
Parsons does what Parsons does, then quite easily.
It's going to be a tight. That is going to be the tightest one out of a lot of them.
Plus, I can't bring myself to say Niners, so Cowboys.
Which is fair. And on the AFC side,
behind gritted teeth.
Yeah. What do we reckon? Chiefs against the Jags? Is the Jags fairy tale over?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, it has to be
Chiefs, isn't it? And then the Bengals Bills at a neutral stadium.
I'm going with the Bills.
This is a big one for me. I mean, the Bills, that I would have went for the Bills weeks ago, but the Bengals have just come on to such a good game. I'm going to go for the upset and say the Bengals are going to pick them.
I think the Bengals have just got, although the Bills have got that, DeMar, heartache, all of that sort of story and everything else. I just think the Bengals are just like they were last year. They're just hot at the right time, and the Bills are swing.
The only thing I think is, although they have improved the O-line, that Bills defensive line is vicious. And if they can just knock a few of those Bengals about, we've seen what's happened
get to Burrows
in previous years. If they get to Burrows quick, they'll knock him off his stride. And I think that's what they'll do. And I think that's why I think, once Josh Allen gets out of that second gear and starts getting to third, fourth, fifth gear, he's almost unstoppable.
Yeah.
It's the Bills miss their captain in defense too much. They miss Von Miller too much for me, and that's it. Since he went out, their defense hasn't been as strong as it was when he was in there. And that for me could be crucial in the game.
I think we do have two games on one game on either side that is. I don't want to say a dead set because there is never a dead set.
Yeah,
but
you think it's two games at home team. You think are pretty much nailed on.
And then you've got two.
Who's playing the Eagles and who's playing the Chiefs?
Yeah, and I think those second two games, it wouldn't shock me if the Cowboys or the Niners won, and it wouldn't shock me if the Bengals or the Bills won.
Yeah. Those lower seeded ones are the games where it's really going to be at, isn't it? Because it's fourth against second in our side, and fifth against second, and then it's third against fourth in the other side. It's this, or two or three or whatever it is. It's the perfect sort of storm. So those are definitely the games to watch for this weekend. Gents, appreciate your time. It's been lovely catching up with you guys. Hopefully we'll try and organise one in between before the championship game and see how well we did and whether or not we called it. Until next time, gents, this has been Football from Across the Pond. Thanks for watching.